Pink October, the third-floor oncology ward, hums. It's a quiet, artificial sound, the kind that tries to fill the spaces where hope used to be. Fluorescent lights wash all the color from the walls, all except for the aggressively cheerful pink ribbons taped to every surface. Pink for October, pink for awareness. But here, under the sterile hum and the relentlessly upbeat decor, the air is thick with things no one dares to name fear, exhaustion, and a quiet, creeping dread that has nothing to do with medicine. Night shifts are the worst. The hospital seems to hold its breath, and when it's that quiet, you start to hear other sounds. The old building settling, the long sigh of the ventilation, and sometimes something else, something that's listening. Elara's thumb traces the edge of a chart, the paper worn soft. Her shift is a familiar rhythm, soft-soled steps, gentle blanket adjustments, and the low murmur of reassurance. In room 308, Mrs. Gable lies perfectly still, her eyes fixed on a corner of the ceiling where the shadows are deepest. She hasn't said a word in 2 days. Elara tries to coax a response out of her, just a small one. Nothing, just the slow, steady beep of the heart monitor. "I'll be right outside, Helen," she whispers, patting the woman's frail hand. She pulls the door almost shut and heads back to the nurse's station. The hallway is a tunnel of pink. A big, laminated banner sags between 2 lights, throwing a long, sharp shadow on the floor. As Elara passes, the shadow seems to snag, stretching out like taffy, its edges darkening and pulling into something impossibly thin and tall before snapping right back to normal. Elara stops, turns. It's just a shadow. She shakes her head, chalking it up to exhaustion. She's just tired. But as she turns away, the cardiac monitor on the wall outside the next room flickers. The clean green line of a healthy rhythm dissolves into garbled text. For one freezing second, the screen doesn't show a heartbeat. It shows 2 words: give up. Then, just as fast, it's back to normal. Elara stares, tapping the glass with her knuckle. A glitch. It has to be a glitch. Over the next few nights, the glitches become a pattern. A cold spot starts to drift through the ward, and it has nothing to do with the air conditioning. It seems to settle in the doorways of the patients who've withdrawn the most. Elara feels it brush past her, a pocket of air so cold it makes the hair on her arms stand up. Then come the whispers. They're faint and slick, like a radio tuned to pure static, and they seem to bleed from the walls whenever she passes the rooms of those who stopped fighting. The ones who turned their faces away from visitors and meal trays, driven by an unease that sleep just won't fix. Elara uses her break to go down to the hospital's basement archives. The air is stale, thick with the smell of old paper and dust. In a forgotten corner, she finds a stack of old nursing logs, their leather covers cracked and faded. She opens one from 1968. The handwriting is elegant, but the words are frantic. A nurse named Agnes wrote of a shadow of despair on the oncology ward. She didn't describe it as a ghost, but as a presence, an unseen parasite that latched onto the sickest patients. "It is a cold thing," Agnes wrote. It seems to grow stronger as the patient's own strength fades. It feeds on their lost hope, and I see it in the corners of my eyes. A tall darkness that rejoices in grief. Entry after entry from different years mentions it. Staff hearing scraping sounds from empty ends of the ward. Keys vanishing on the night shift, only to reappear right when they were needed most. It was a known thing, a quiet horror story the hospital tried to bury under new wings and modern paint. It all becomes terrifyingly real on a Tuesday. The code blue alarm shrieks through the ward, a sound that just rips the night apart. Room 308. Mrs. Gable, Elara, is the first one in. The room is Arctica deep, unnatural cold that sinks right into her bones. And for one heart-stopping moment, before the crash team bursts in behind her, she sees it. Looming over Mrs. Gable's bed is a figure. It isn't solid. It's made of writhing, swirling shadows. A vaguely human-shaped silhouette of pure emptiness. It has no face, but Elara feels it looking at her, feels its ancient, hungry awareness. The second the other nurses and the doctor flood the room, the shape dissolves, melting back into the normal shadows, as if it were never there. They work on Mrs. Gable for 20 minutes, but it's no use. As the doctor calls the time of death, he frowns, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She's so cold," he mutters, and he's not talking about the clinical facts of her passing. Elara stands frozen by the door, the image of that shadow figure burned into her mind. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was real, and it just killed her patient. The pieces click into place, and the picture they form is horrifying. The old logbook, the cold spots, the whispers, the flickering monitors. This isn't a haunting, it's a hunt. The entity this despair, as she's started to call, it is a predator. It plays by a specific set of rules, like some kind of psychic vampire that feeds on hopelessness instead of blood. It helps that hopelessness grow, nurtures it, and when a person is finally hollowed out by their own misery, it moves in and takes the last thing they have. Suddenly, the pink ribbons and the cheerful keep fighting. Posters feel like a sick joke. They offer a simple, marketable version of hope that stands no chance against the soul-crushing reality of the disease. The campaign's bright colors are just a thin coat of paint over a rotting wall, and the creature thrives in that gap there, one between the empty encouragement on the walls and the real anguish in the beds. The more hope disappears, the stronger and more real the entity becomes. It doesn't just appear in the dark, it is the dark. And Elara realizes with a fresh wave of terror that it's already looking for its next meal. Its new target is Anjali in room 312. She's only 26, and her latest scans were bad. The news completely shattered her. Elara finds her crying silently, curled into a tight ball, the very picture of absolute defeat. The air in Anjali's room is already getting colder, the shadows in the corners deepening, looking like they're crawling toward her bed. Elara can feel it in the room, a palpable pressure, a suffocating weight of misery. She knows she can't fight it physically. You can't punch a shadow. You can't write a prescription for despair. This battle has to be fought on its own turf. taking a shaky breath. Elara walks into the room and takes Anjali's hand. "It's like ice." "I know," Elara says softly. "I know it feels impossible right now." She doesn't offer empty platitudes or forced smiles. She talks about real things. She reminds Anjali of the day her friends visited, and they all laughed so hard they cried over some stupid movie. She talks about the small win of keeping her breakfast down last Tuesday. She talks about the tiny moments of grace and grit she's seen right here on this ward. "This isn't about pretending the fear isn't there," Elara says, her grip tightening on Anjali's hand. "It's about not letting it be the only thing that's there." From across the hall, an old man named Arthur hears the commotion and appears in the doorway, leaning on the fourth pole. A moment later, another patient, Maria, joins him. They don't say a word. They just stand there, their presence a silent, shared act of defiance. Elara looks at the pink ribbon taped to the doorframe. With a surge of anger, she rips it down. "This isn't just a color," she says, pressing the ribbon into Anjali's palm. "It's a promise that we show up, that we fight, even when we're terrified." That's the part it can't understand. As she speaks, something new flickers in the room. A stubborn, fragile, but fiercely human will. It's in Anjali's grip as her fingers close around the ribbon. It's in the determined set of Arthur's jaw. It is a tiny flame of shared hope, but in the crushing darkness, it shines like a searchlight. The deep shadows in the room seem to thin out, to recoil from the unexpected light. The suffocating cold recedes, and the pressure in the air lifts. The despair, starved of the pure, absolute hopelessness it needs to exist, scatters like smoke in the wind. It's been repelled, but Elara knows, with a certainty that chills her to the bone, that it hasn't been destroyed. Anjali is breathing easier. The tears are still on her face, but the utter brokenness in her eyes is gone, replaced by a flicker of her own fight. The crisis is over for now. Hours later, Elara walks out of the hospital into the pre-dawn grey. The streetlights cast long shadows that, for the first time in a long time, don't seem to move on their own. She's exhausted, but she feels a small, sharp sense of victory. The ward behind her is quiet. A fragile peace settled over it, but the hospital is large, and as the story pulls away from the oncology wing, it glides down silent, sterile corridors. It passes cardiology, pediatrics, and finally settles outside the emergency room. There, a man sits alone on a plastic chair, his head buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. In the dark corner behind him, unseen by the bustling staff, a wisp of shadow detaches itself from the wall. It's thin and faint, but it's there, and it's starting to grow. Despair is patient. It will always find someone else.